pass this piece of pipestone around so that you can touch it, hold it, and then pass it around, and it'll come back to Chuck, I guess. But as you do that, I'm reminded of a number of years ago, there was an incident at Michigan Tech. The last day of the semester, I believe it was, somebody came along and with chalk did a lot of hateful language on a lot of buildings and sidewalks. And we had a gathering not long after that of people in the basement of one of the dorms, people that needed to come together to express their concerns and have a talking circle of sorts. And I was asked to moderate that, and I felt like I needed some kind of a talking stick, and I brought this piece of pipestone, and I explained a little bit about it. And as we passed it around, it was both a healing time, a time of healing, but it was also a time of open, honest angst, expression of angst. And so this stone has helped with that process, I believe. So as you pass it around, maybe just let it speak to you a little bit if you can. So Sherry, could you come up and get this, please? Thank you. So if you could put the first slide on there, Juxta, I'd appreciate it. This is called There Are Secrets in the Rocks, and it's a little bit of information about early American history of Isle Royale and indigenous people on the island, pre-European influence. I learned years ago that I don't know if they still do this or not, but if you want to get free passage on the boat to Isle Royale, all you got to do is put together a talk. Well, that took a little bit longer than I had planned, and this is the talk that I ended up giving on the Ranger. What you're passing around is a piece of catlinite, which is referred to as pipestone, from which medicine pipes are made, and it is sacred to indigenous people. And so I have this picture of a pipe and a reading from Black Elk, who is a Lakota holy man. With this holy pipe, you will walk a living prayer, your feet resting upon the earth, the pipe stem reaching all the way up into the sky, and your body forming a living bridge between the sacred beneath and the sacred above. Wakantanka smiles upon us because we are now as one. Earth, sky, all living things, the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the trees, and the grasses together with the humans. Now we are all one family, related to each other. The pipe is what holds us together. So most of the pipestone that we are familiar with, like the piece that you're passing around, came from the land around Pipestone, Minnesota. Stone from that area was traded and still is used around the country to make pipes. So in teaching world religions over the years at Finlandia and at Michigan Tech, I often invited a pipe carrier from the Keweenaw Bay tribe to talk about Ojibwa spirituality. And one of those people has a number of pipes, one of which is made of greenstone. And he said it is a very old pipe that was made from stone from the island, Isle Royale, which sparked my interest in both the island and the presence of early people there. And by early, I mean before written and recorded history of this area, before the French in particular and other European groups that really began to explore the Upper Peninsula. And most people that I talked to told me that, well, not much was written about that time because it's prehistory, so to speak. And though I did find information in the MTU archives and library, but like any prehistory, as it is often called, and whatever that really means, I mean, think about what is prehistory? Yeah, but come on, really, what does prehistory mean? I mean, much of it Much of what I found is educational conjecture, or, in other words, good guesswork. An author of one of the pieces that I found, called Wood's Magic and Mystique, said it well. There are secrets in the rocks. In his book, A River Runs Through It, Norman MacLean wrote this toward the end. Eventually all things merge into one, and a river runs through it. The river was cut by the world's great flood and runs over rocks from the basement of time. On some of the rocks are timeless raindrops. Under the rocks are the words, and some of the words are theirs. So you can put on the next picture. Some of those raindrops helped form this ancient rock that is Isle Royale, and it bubbles in the molten lava that look like raindrops helped create what we know as chlorastrolite, the Isle Royale greenstone, which is, if you didn't know, the official state gem of Michigan. It's called Green Star Stone. So maybe it was the secret, or a secret in the rocks, that brought people to this island 4,500 to 6,000 years ago. And then back again many, many times. It was also a different kind of rock that we know as copper, from which these people made spear points and knives and awls and ornaments. So like the pipestone in southwestern Minnesota, this copper was used for trading all around the world. It is estimated that 280 to 375 tons of copper were removed from the island before any European people showed up. One source said it was believed that the native people took out a very large amount of metal. From Isle Royale and the Upper Peninsula came, I quote, came all the copper used in the fabrications of thousands of implements and ornaments found throughout Wisconsin and adjoining states, unquote. It has been found in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio, Illinois, Texas, and around the mouth of the Mississippi River. That's copper from Isle Royale. So as you know, how many people have been to Isle Royale? Show of hands. Oh, wow, most of you. Okay, as you know, Isle Royale is a long way out into the water from here. As you also know, copper is heavy, right? So why come all the way out to the island to get copper and then bring it all the way back again out over a very dangerous path? Why would they, those ancient people, risk a loaded canoe 50 to 100 miles out on a stormy and dangerous lake, especially when copper can be found on the mainland? One reason is simple. It's the best. It's the best copper around. It is identifiable and noted for its silver content, but why is also part of the mystery that's in the rocks. The native or indigenous people mined copper mostly in shallow pits, but some of those pits were 20 to 60 feet deep. When other early explorers showed up, some reported that it was almost as if one could not step onto the island without stepping into a pit. Other sources seem to differ in their opinion. Some said these pits were only located in a few specific places. It is possible that explorers then did not find a plethora of mines, nor did they seem to find much copper. Two options then enhance this mystery. Number one, the early indigenous people must have mined it all, right? They got it all. Raise your hand if you believe that to be true. No hands go up for those out in the audience out there. Or perhaps the stories were larger than fact, right? But it's there. The copper is there. And the rocks have secrets. An article in 1873 describes the copper discovery in a way similar to gold being discovered in the Black Hills or California. One could simply wade out into the water and scoop it up. These words are from an article written by a Jesuit called The Ancient Copper Workings on Isle Royale, and it was written around 1669. Advancing as far as the Great Inlet, one comes to an island 3 leagues from land, renowned for the metal that is found there, and for the name Thunder, which it bears because it is said to thunder all the time. But farther to the west, on the north side, is found the island which is most famous for copper, and it is called Menang. This is the one in which, as the savages have told many people, the metal exists in abundance and in many places. It is large and is fully 25 leagues long. It is distant 7 leagues from the mainland and more than 60 from the end of the lake. Pieces of copper, mingled with the stones, are found at the water's edge almost all around the island, especially on the south side, but principally in a certain inlet that is near the end facing the northeast. Toward the offing, there are some very steep clay hills where are seen several strata or beds of red copper, one over another, separated by other strata of earth or of rocks. In the water is seen copper sand, as it were, and from it may be dipped up with ladles, grains as large as a nut, and other smaller ones reduced to sand. This large island is almost all surrounded with islets that are said to be formed of copper. They are encountered in various places as far as the mainland on the north. One, among others, is only 2 gunshots distant from Menang. It is between the middle of the island and the end that faces northeast. And again, on this northeast side, far out in the lake, there is another island, which, because of the copper in which it abounds, is called Manituminus, or Island of the Spirit. Of this it is related that those who came here formerly, upon throwing stones at the ground, made it ring, just as brass is wont to ring. Last spring, it goes on, we bought from the savages a slab of pure copper, 2 feet square and weighing more than 100 livres. It is not thought, however, that the mines are found in the islands, but that all these copper pebbles probably come from Menang or from the other islands which are sources of it, borne upon floating ice or rolled along in the depths of the water by the very impetuous winds, particularly by the northeast wind, which is extremely violent. That's part of the mythology of copper. The reality was probably a bit different than that. The rocks have many secrets. But archaeologists and historians and anthropologists have deduced a method of mining copper that is not quite as easy as just scooping it up or ladling it up out of the water. Many hammerheads have been found, teardrop-shaped stones, hand-sized and larger, most likely brought over from Canada, that the native people used to pound the copper out of the rock. Many of these hammers have been found in the root systems of uprooted trees, as if they were set down there after a day's work and left, to which people never returned. Near McCargo Cove, a place mentioned as being heavily mined, a copper boulder weighing 5,700 pounds was found deep in an ancient pit. It was too heavy to bring up, so it was chipped away at. But just chipping away at a rock is not a very successful way to retrieve copper, so fires were built on the rock, and water was brought from the lake, which is also not as easy as it might sound, and thrown onto the heated surface, and then these stone hammers would work the copper out. The rocks have many secrets. Another reason that they mined copper on Isle Royale is much less mysterious and romantic. Mining was probably done as part of an annual round of hunting, fishing, and berry collecting. It is believed that these annual rounds possibly continued over as many as 1,500 years. In the non-winter months, when people came to the island, they fished for trout and herring and pickerel and whitefish and hunted caribou and moose. And the soil on the southwest part of the island was suitable for corn, melons, tobacco, and of course, if you've been there during berry season, there are berries. So who were these people? In the language of the tribal past, the families of the woodland spoke of themselves as the Anishinabeg, people of the woodland who spoke the same language. The language was common to perhaps 45 to 50,000 people in the north-central part of this continent. Minnesota anthropologist and ethnographer Francis Densmore points out that the name Chippewa is comparatively modern and is the name under which the tribe was designated by the government in treaties and other negotiations. They often refer to themselves as Ojibwa. One translation of Ojibwa means puckered up and refers to their particular style of moccasins. Similar to most other native ways of naming, the word Anishinabeg is based on experience of their lives and surroundings and can be translated as human being. Perhaps when you think about it, this means human as opposed to non-human peoples in their world. This opens up to us one of a common understanding of a particular view of the world that is common to those who lived in prehistorical times, their religious practice. Though in most indigenous people's language there is no word for religion, it would have meant how they understand the world and how they interpret its meaning, that the world is alive with beings and powers. For example, the sun and the moon and the four winds, thunder and lightning were seen as benign or friendly powers. On the other hand, ghosts and witches and Wendigo, supernatural cannibalistic giant, were definitely to be feared. The Great Spirit was called Gitchimanito. They believed in the power of dreams and visions that were used to allow the human beings to live in their world together with all other things. So these woodland tribes trailed the shore of this great lake to the hardwoods and swamps where families drew sugar from the maple trees in the spring and gathered wild rice in autumn and returned each cycle to their winter camps. For many, then, summers would have included Menong, or what we know as Isle Royale. So it is not easy to explain, really, how their world was seen and understood because it is a vastly different mythology from our own. So in Keepers of the Game, Indian Animal Relations and the Fur Trade, Calvin Martin wrote these words: "The single most important deterrent to excessive hunting was the fear of spiritual reprisal for indiscreet slaughter. Nature, as conceived by traditional Ojibwa, was a congeries of societies. Every animal, fish, and plant species functioned in a society that was parallel in all respects to human families, and they were keepers of the game or leaders of animal families." Now, the modern scientific world is not lost on these people, but their way of believing is an indication of how rooted and how in place these people are, and how a mythology speaks to a different purpose in life and about a different paradigm or way of understanding the world. So think of it this way: the distinction between The human and animal world as we recognize it doesn't exist. There is no artificial or hierarchical division between animals and humanity. Human beings and nature belong to the same order. All life have spirits, even the line between animate and inanimate, which we often think of rocks as being inanimate. The line between animate and inanimate is blurred. Rocks are alive, and the island and the big lake surrounding it and all the things on it and within it are alive. All beings are living relatives and depend on each other. Thus, everything is, in its way, religious. Everything is sacred. And this was a functional mythology. It was a way of understanding their world, and it worked, and it still does for those willing to adopt a different way of living. So in the 17th century, voyageurs and the first missionaries established a fur trading post on the island. The Anishinaabe taught the traders and the colonists how to endure the long woodland winters. But less than half of the tribe survived the smallpox epidemic and other serious infections. It was from detailed French cartography, early maps of 1674, that we first know that the Anishinaabe knew the island, because the details of the French that the French received from them were correct. But the French thought these people were superstitious and kept copper pieces as so many divinities, or as presents from gods dwelling beneath the water. So in Beyond Geography, the Western Spirit Against the Wilderness, Frederick Turner writes that the sacred tribal attachment to the earth, and I quote, amounted to a different kind of possession that the whites were prepared to understand as they looked about these places and found them empty of visible marks of tenancy. To them, the whites, the lands were satanic rather than sacred. And the traders and their employees could tolerate the wilderness only in the hope that eventually they could make enough money to leave it behind and return to civilization to live like humans. And so they would grimly push out into the woods beyond the farthest reach of civilization. And here they would establish a post and make it known that they stood ready to supply the needs of the resident tribes in return for pelts taken in trapping and hunting. Here again we encounter the clash between history and myth, with the whites driven to enormous technological ingenuity, producing a vast array of seductive items for peoples of the globe whose spiritual contentments had kept their own technologies at comparatively simple levels. We know now that there has been no people on earth capable of resisting this seduction, for none has been able to see the hidden and devious byways that lead inevitably from the consumption of the new luxuries to the destruction of the myths that give life its meaning. And then the mining stopped, and no one really knows why. And the people named the Chippewa, Gerald Visner wrote, the Ojibwa affirmed that long before they became aware of the white man's presence on this continent, their coming was prophesied by one of their old men, whose great sanctity and oft-repeated fasts enabled him to commune with spirits and see far into the future. He prophesied that the white spirits would come in numbers like sand on the lake shore, and it would sweep the red race from the hunting grounds which the Great Spirit had given them as an inheritance. It was prophesied that the consequences of the white man's appearance would be to the Anishinaabe an ending of the world. So there are a few clues. The silent pits remain. No recorded history really tells the details. What the island was and their sense of geography and legend are all questions that are still buried in the rocks and time. So it is significant, more than we know, that a piece of stone from Manong was shaped and carved into a sacred pipe that holds the secrets of this Anishinaabe view of their world. There are still secrets in the rocks. What can they tell us if we listen? Perhaps that it is all sacred.